Welcome to Dev Architect, the channel for developers who are tired of tutorials that teach you how to click buttons but never how to think. By the end of this video, you'll understand when Clientlibs are the right choice, when ES modules make sense, and why most enterprise AEM teams misuse both. In almost every AEM project, this debate shows up sooner or later. Client libs are outdated. We should use ES modules. Or the opposite. ES modules are risky. Client libs are safer. And what usually happens? The team picks a side, and performance still suffers. In this video, I'm not here to pick a winner. I'm here to explain why enterprises misuse both client libs and ES modules, and how to think architecturally instead of emotionally. Let's slow down and clear up one of the most misunderstood parts of AEM frontend. Client libs exist to solve delivery problems, not architecture problems. That's it. Everything else makes sense once you accept this. First, what do client libs actually solve? Dependency management. Client libs let AEM know which assets depend on which other assets. If one library needs another, AEM resolves that order for you before sending anything to the browser. Not business logic, not component structure, just asset dependency order. Second, aggregation. Instead of sending 15 JavaScript and CSS files to the browser, AEM concatenates them into fewer files. This reduces network requests. That's a delivery optimization, not an architectural decision. Third, minification. Client libs can compress JS and CSS using tools like UE or GCC. Again, this is about payload size, not code quality, not modularity, not design patterns. Fourth, cache invalidation. Client libs generate versioned URLs so browsers know when to fetch new assets. You change the code, the URL changes, cache is safely busted. This is a delivery concern, purely. Now here's the important part, and this is where people go wrong. Client libs were never meant to define how you architect JavaScript. They don't care about MVC, flux, hooks, services, state management, clean code boundaries. They only care about how assets are shipped to the browser. So, takeaway is, client libs answer how assets are delivered, not how logic should be structured. Once you understand this, you stop fighting client libs and you stop forcing architecture decisions into a delivery system. And that single mindset shift instantly makes your AEM frontend cleaner, faster, and more scalable. One of the most common patterns I see in large AEM code bases is this idea. Every component should have its own client lib. At first glance, this feels clean. It feels modular. It feels aligned with component-driven development. But in real-world AEM applications, this pattern quietly creates more problems than it solves. Let's walk through why this happens, and more importantly, why client libs were never designed for this job. The intention, component isolation. The intention behind per component client libs is understandable. Each component has its own JavaScript, its own CSS, its own client lib folder. So the mental model becomes, this component is fully isolated. Its behavior and styles live together. Nothing leaks. From a developer perspective, this sounds ideal. But AEM doesn't operate on developer mental models. It operates on delivery pipelines. And that's where the disconnect begins. What happens at scale? At small scale, per component client libs seem manageable. At enterprise scale, the reality changes fast. You're no longer dealing with 10 or 20 components. You're dealing with 200 plus components built by multiple teams over multiple years. Each team copies shared utilities because it's faster than coordinating ownership. Helpers, polyfills, and patterns spread everywhere. Everything still ships as one aggregated bundle, but no single team owns it. No one feels responsible for size, order, or side effects. Key insight is Clientlibs don't enforce discipline. Teams must. This isn't a tooling problem, it's an architectural responsibility. Why teams fall in love with ES modules? Teams gravitate toward ES modules because they solve real problems developers face every day. Imports are explicit. You can see exactly where code comes from. Dependencies are enforced by the language, not by convention. Tree shaking removes unused code automatically. Only what's actually imported makes it into the bundle. Lazy loading becomes natural. Features load when they're needed, not upfront. And the syntax itself is modern, readable, and familiar to anyone working outside AEM. But here's the key distinction. ES modules solve problems Clientlibs never tried to solve. Clientlibs handle delivery. ES modules handle architecture. Developers often bundle everything into one huge JS file, using modern tools like Webpack or Vite, ignoring AM's page-based architecture. At first glance, it seems convenient, one bundle to rule them all, but it creates serious problems. Overfetching JS. Users download scripts they don't need. Slower first load. The browser waits for a massive file to parse. Poor cache reuse. Even small changes break the cache, forcing full reloads. Why does this happen? Because modern tooling doesn't automatically mean modern architecture. Tools like Webpack and Vite are just that, tools. They help deliver assets efficiently, but they don't dictate how your site should be structured. So, what's the better approach? Page-level clientlibs. Load only what each page needs. Code splitting and lazy loading. Fetch JS on demand. Cache-friendly bundles. Separate frequently used code from rarely used features. By respecting AEM's page-based nature, you keep pages fast, lean, and scalable. Many teams mix up how code is delivered with how code is structured, and it causes unnecessary complexity. Let me explain. Clientlibs are about delivery. They define how code reaches the browser. They don't dictate how your logic should be written. ES modules, on the other hand, are about responsibility. These two concerns are orthogonal, independent of each other. You can have perfectly modular ES modules, but if you bundle them poorly in Clientlibs, the site will still be slow. Similarly, even optimized Clientlibs won't save a messy, tightly coupled codebase. Here's the key takeaway. Most teams fail because they try to solve architecture with tooling. In other words, tools manage delivery, not design. Focus first on modular, maintainable architecture. Then use clientlibs, bundlers, and modern tools to deliver that code efficiently. Keep delivery and responsibility separate, and you'll have a fast, scalable, and maintainable front end. Hybrid, intentional architecture. The idea is simple. Separate concerns between ES modules and client libs. ES modules handle the internal structure of your code. They create clear boundaries, enforce responsibility, and make reuse easy across components. Think of them as defining what exists in your codebase. Client libs handle delivery. They control when and how your code reaches the browser, manage cache strategy, and ensure page-level responsibility. Here's a mental model to remember. Modules decide what exists. Client libs decide when it loads. Let that sink in. By keeping these concerns separate, you get the best of both worlds. A modular, maintainable code base and efficient, fast page delivery. This approach avoids the common trap of trying to solve architecture with tooling and instead creates intentional, predictable patterns for both development and performance. How to decide? Simple rules. Think of it as a quick mental checklist. If logic is shared across pages or components, put it in a module. This ensures reuse and maintainability. If logic is optional or rarely used, lazy load it. Don't burden every page with code that's not always needed. If logic is page specific, put it in a page level client lib. That keeps delivery tight and efficient. If logic is only needed for authors, keep it out of publish. No need for end users to download editor only scripts. And here's the key takeaway: architecture is about constraints, not preferences. By following these simple rules, you enforce clarity, efficiency, and scalability, and avoid over engineering or misusing tools. Before we finish, remember, client libs are not outdated. ES modules are not a silver bullet. The real success in enterprise frontend comes when teams understand why tools exist, not just how to use them. In the next video, we'll tackle another silent problem: CSS at scale in AEM, and why BEM alone is not enough. Stay tuned, because understanding these patterns will save you time, frustration, and improve performance across your projects.